They've got the whole backyard.
And they're like,
and they got to 10 minutes.
Jesus. Look, I almost said, it sounds like a bear's coming in, but we don't have any bears in North Central Texas.
Hey guys, and we are back now for part 2 of this YAWA. Our guest, Peter Armstrong, DVM, is here to help answer some vet questions as well as share experience. He's an avid bird hunter and he's got some really nice dogs.
Speaking.
I bred and trained them and all the things, so that was a compliment for me. Yeah.
They do okay.
So, speaking of questions, let's get this one started off with a really good question from Michelle Clemens. Why can't we get a CHV vaccine approved in the US? From what I hear, it's doing a great job in Europe. And for those of you that may not know, what is CHV? It's canine herpes virus.
Canine herpes virus. So the typical problem we see with that, right, is going to be fading puppy syndrome, most commonly. So it's dogs that are exposed to that in the first time they're exposed to that, and then we see those puppies usually from 3 to 5 to up to 2 to 3 weeks old, 2 to 3 days old to up to 3 weeks old. We see the problems with it.
Why up to 3 weeks?
I think that's probably more related just either exposure time or the problem that temperatures maybe not regulated.
The temperature thing is what we've experienced and seen.
So those puppies are getting out and moving around a little bit more. So it definitely is
you get a little viral thing and a fever spikes and the fever kills the virus. Well, if you can't spike a fever, you can't kill the virus.
Yeah. So my guess would be it's all FDA related. So most vaccines that work really well in other countries, we don't get here because of the FDA. So the money that it takes, and then a drug company's perceived, money they can make back off of that product, is really difficult. And so we work with a lot of breeding dogs, and we see this as a pretty serious problem for a lot of people. And it can be really detrimental to the entire litter. Because it's usually a day or 2 or 3 before you realize what's going on. We have all these puppies that are dying, and
there's very little that you can do other than some supportive care.
And
then the temperature changes.
Temperatures aren't good.
And it's all related to just symptomatic care and hoping that they make it through it. So it's a really tough virus, and unfortunately, drug companies chase the dollars. I mean, that's just the way that deal works.
And so they look at it from a sense that there's not enough demand for it to be approved in the U.S.
And the good thing about herpes is once a female dog is exposed to herpes, has a litter that has this problem, she's going to be good for the rest of the litter. She's
going to be producing
vaccinated
antibodies that she's passing on to those puppies. So it's first-time litters with moms that haven't necessarily...
Especially dogs brought into new kennels or new situations.
And we actually experienced this firsthand, and it was horrible. And if you follow us and have for a few years, you saw we posted the story and as much information to educate as we could. And in that process of learning that, I mean, I think the statistic we saw was upwards of 70% of dogs have actually been exposed to CHV1
because it's passed along in community type environments. So dogs that have been boarded, trained, gone to hunt tests, gone to hunt
dog shows, whatever,
even just gone to the vet for routine care, there's the potential that they've been exposed.
Daycare or dog parks.
Yep. All the places dogs go.
Yeah.
Yes, all the places dogs go.
Speaking of dog parks, I'm just going to throw this one out there because I try and educate as often as I can. We drove past a dog park today, and don't take young puppies to a dog park. Make sure they're 100% fully vaccinated prior to doing so.
Yes.
They're cesspools.
Yes. They're a very good place to pick up lots of things. Okay. This is a good question from Facebook from Nathan Dean. 9-month-old GSP, and he didn't have a ton of exposure as a younger puppy with other dogs. So I think that has made him get overly excited when he sees other dogs. He plays a little rough with them. Any suggestions on how to calm his reactions to new dogs and new people as well?
So I'm going to throw this out there because I'm a big advocate for this, and everything is genetic. And a lot of people make, I don't want to say excuses because excuses is a harsh word, but excuses for this didn't happen or this happened or whatever. And long and short of it is your dog is predisposed via genetics, and they're going to have those temperaments or personalities. So I'm getting at the fact that it's not something that you did or didn't do. Let's start with that. Next, how to work through it.
Can you socialize a dog
I'm
through
going
that?
to actually disagree with Ethan. This is going to be interesting.
Okay.
And maybe
Bring
you just didn't hear the question in the same sense that I did.
Okay, let's go.
So, 9-month-old GSP didn't have a ton of exposure as a younger puppy with other dogs. So it sounds like potentially a socialization thing where the dog didn't just have the opportunity to learn how to properly play. And it sounds like he's just truly playing and getting excited with other dogs. And other dogs sometimes don't see that exuberance as play. And some dogs don't necessarily read other dogs' body language properly, especially if they really haven't had exposure. That can happen too sometimes if puppies are taken away from their mothers too young, because mother dogs really teach them those cues of, hey, I'm kind of giving you this little stiffness. That's a sign that you need to back off. That's a sign that, hey, I'm not actually enjoying this play anymore. Pinning their ears, standing real tall. Those things, and people don't always recognize those as signs that the dogs are saying, hey, this is too much. I want you to back off for a little bit. And we don't necessarily see that. Those dogs that haven't had a lot of exposure don't recognize those signs either. And so they keep picking. Their owners keep letting them play like that. And then a dog fight can happen. So are there genetic factors that can go into a dog's tendency to be more aggressive? Yes, but I think that socialization is also very important for a dog to understand what is a proper way to interact with other dogs and other people, because it says that they get overly excited with people as well, which is dogs. I mean, new, exciting situations get them really excited.
So how would that person then socialize or expose that dog at 9 months old? How would they expose those dogs to those things to set that up for success?
That's where Ethan was going with
Outside of genetics.
What he could talk about with suggestions to help now.
And I 100% do not disagree that there is socialization aspects into dogs, but the fact that the dog acts this way with both people and other dogs is where I was going with the fact that, I mean, the dog is probably genetically predisposed to being squirrely and having that excitable personality. And yes, training can help with this. Things like, depending on where the situation is at, place training is our big go-to with excitable dogs. So you can take the excitement level down by saying, you're going to stay over here until we see you come off of the 11 down into the manageable level. And you can see it. It's very, very plain. The timing takes different for different dogs, but we say, go kennel, because we have company coming over. Bing bong. Normally dogs are jumping, going ballistic. Your dog's over here, excited, but
dancing around on their dog bed, but they're contained. They're not jumping on anyone.
Yeah, they don't have the ability to. And then you see 10, 15 minutes in, they've kind of relaxed, then come meet everybody. And you've kind of eliminated that super exciting time period so that you can help to diminish the naughty behaviors that come with that level of excitement. Now, as far as meeting other dogs, I mean, you have to kind of police both sides of that. So you're saying to the dog that's getting overly excited, yours in this case, hey, you need to calm down a little bit. And that place training or even just heel work or some level of obedience can play into that, where you're saying, you have to sit and stay here. And it's going to be difficult because they're excited and they want to go. But you doing your due diligence at this stage in the game is going to help you work through your 9-month-old so that when they're a 2-year-old, you're not going, oh, it's just the puppy in them. You're saying, I have a well-behaved 2-year-old dog. So.
Agreed.
Like it.
Look, I can agree with him too. I can disagree, and I can
initial
agree.
answer was better, though. I think for the record, Kat's initial answer was better.
There are all aspects of this, one of which is socialization, one of which is predisposition to having different personalities. So,
and if you miss the boat on the early stages of socialization, you can continue working on socialization and all of that obedience to help with some of these issues you're having now.
It's a really good question. It's one of the first ones that I believe in all of these in a very long time that we've not 100% agreed. So
good job.
But you know, I've lived that with, so I have an English Cocker Spaniel, and he is really excited about everybody he meets. And so for him,
do you think it was a lack of socialization?
No, but No, it's probably more genetic.
Thank you.
You bet.
So Peter really liked my answer, but he agrees with Ethan.
For this one specific dog. But for him, that's a big thing. Is he's currently asleep on his dog bed over there. For him, is that I don't break this dog bed, and I get in trouble for that. And for him, he can wiggle and shake and be all excited for him.
But then he can calm down.
But he can calm down and he can relax because he's got that place where he knows that this is, if somebody wants to come pet me, they come to me. If another dog wants to come up to me, regardless of what I want to do, I stay on my bed, and that's how that goes.
Absolutely.
So this is a really good question as well for Peter from Jack Harrison Survival on Instagram. How dangerous is not medicating for heartworm?
So I practiced in South Louisiana, and then came to Texas. I probably worked in a really busy practice. At least one of the doctors in the practice every single day diagnosed heartworm disease. I mean, that's how big
Prevalent it was in that area for sure.
And so I think it really depends on your area. If you live, in Montana, it may not ever be an issue for you. But I will tell you, I see. I had the other day, which I don't consider our area very prevalent for it. I diagnosed a dog the other day worked on a dog the other day that was 8 months old that was already heartworm positive. Ooh. So testing wise, that means that dog got infected between birth and 2 months of age. And so that's, So that's a big deal. I mean, I think treating it can be dangerous. The dogs that I used to see that got really, really sick were dogs that we, got infected and got reinfected and got reinfected. Prevention's cheap. There's a lot of products. There's a lot of generic products. There's a lot of good, and we've had this discussion before. I mean, a lot of people like generic ivermectin type products. The problem with those is consistency, and a lot of people will mix those with like a propylene glycol type product or something like that. So consistency, mixing, and giving the proper dose are always a concern. The big companies, regardless of who they are or what you use, most of those companies have a guarantee and will stand behind their product. And if your dog gets heartworms on that prevention, they'll pay to treat it. So I think that's a big thing, right? Is how much, for the cost of it. I think the dogs, and to watch dogs die from congestive heart failure secondary to heartworm disease is tough, right? I mean, because these dogs
are so
it's a
typically
3 or 4-year-old, 5-year-old dog that was 1,000% preventable. And then you get to the point that, we just never did anything. And now we can't do anything about this because the burden of worms inside of the heart is too much.
Yeah. And my family saying is an ounce of preventative is more valuable than a pound of cure. So
for sure.
Definitely with our dogs, especially.
And there's a bunch of really good products. I mean, monthly tablets, there's injectable form that lasts up to 12 months now. I mean, you have literally no excuse to, I couldn't remember, you know what I mean? And I'm the worst. The only reason I remember to give my heartworm preventions is because we're having this today, and I should have given it January 1st, and I still haven't given it. So I'm the absolute worst person in the entire world to give my dog's heartworm prevention. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, I know I should be doing it. It's just remembering to do it. So some of those 6 month or 12 month injections are really good products too.
Yeah.
Yes. The shoemaker's children have no shoes. The veterinarian's dogs miss their vaccinations.
Correct.
Correct.
Sure.
I think this is a really good question as well for Peter from WildRosie _ the Aussie. I would imagine this is an Aussie.
From Australia.
Second to the United States, Australia. Woohoo! There you are. Shout out to y'all. Hit the like button, all you Aussies.
Because we get a lot of...
When are we going bird hunting in Australia?
I want to go hunt some stubble quail. That's what they call stubble quail.
Yeah. We get a lot of people following us from Australia, which is awesome. So we got a mild dysplasia report back from OFA on our 2-year-old. Any chances it changes?
So do you want to talk about hips? This is a good time to talk about hips.
Let's talk about hips.
Okay. So there's 2 types of testing for hips. and this may or may not sit well with people or not. So what Ethan and Kat have come down to get some what we call PennHip evaluations done. So it's one of the certifications that I have to do PennHip certifications. And so there's two types, PennHip and OFA. PennHip is a subjective reading, meaning that we take x-rays, we take what we call a VD view of those hips. We send them in. They go to 3 radiologists. Those 3 radiologists read those OFAs, and they give a rating. That can only be done after the age of 24 months. Yep. You can have preliminaries done beforehand. And then the other rating would be PennHip. So PennHip can be done at 16 weeks. It is not subjective, it's objective. We take a series of 3 views, use the same view that OFA uses. So a lot of times we use those and we get those dogs OFA certified if they're of that age. We then take a compression view where we actually push those balls all the way into the hip socket to show how deep they can sit. And then we use a distractor that actually sits on the dog. And I'm hoping we can get some video of this.
We plan to.
So that we can show what this looks like. And then get a look of the distance that those hips come out of the socket. Everything has some movement. There's a ligament that holds that ball into that socket. And so then that is a measurement, and then that's all based off a breed standard of where that correlates to risk for dysplasia. So I do both of these testings. I mean, I think they both have their place. I think both of them are geared towards what consumer knows anything about them, right? If nobody knows what PennHip is, then it's hard to say, well, my dog's PennHip is a 0.24 and a 0.28, because people don't know that. But OFA is definitely the easier one to do. Just any veterinarian can take those and send those in. And then the more common one that's done. So they were given as mildly dysplastic. So mildly dysplastic, I mean, it's going to be, there's a risk for dysplasia. I don't know. Did we say how old we were?
2 years old.
2 years old. There's the chance that those hips continue to get worse over the age of that dog. There's also a chance that those hips stay the same.
Any chance they get better?
Not going to get any better. No.
They're not going to improve.
But theoretically, I guess you could have different views on your x-rays or things like that. But overall, so again, let's go back to what we talked about.
Some like stem cell injections in the hip
socket
or something.
For sure. But I think a dog like that, mildly dysplastic, is a good dog. We talked about chondroitin and, I try to remember the Dasequin is the product that we use all the time. So one of those products, chondroitin and glucosamine products to try to help those joints, I think is a really good product to use.
Stay really well lubricated and cushioned so that even though there's some mild dysplasia,
we know it's coming,
yep.
Right? So let's do everything we can to deal with this as well as possible.
Now, what about with our old man who's sore and arthritic and everything else, you have us using Attn. Is there a place for this, or is that something?
Probably at this age. So Attn is an injection that we use in dogs that typically decreases the inflammation in the joint, increases synovial fluid, and decreases some of the inflammatory responses. So a lot of times a dog, once we're showing signs of that, we'll use these older dogs. We use it quite frequently to start them in the hunting season. Just gives them a little bit better. They handle the breakdown a little bit easier.
So this dog that's only 2 and probably doesn't show any symptoms of having pain,
I would start that dog on
discomfort.
glucosamine and chondroitin, and that's probably all I'll do at this point, and monitor and
if down the road that dog ends up having some discomfort and stiffness and soreness,
NSAIDs are a possibility. Attquan's a possibility. Stem cells a possibility. Those are things that are doable. So all those are possibilities.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good question. So next question. I'm going to skip back to one for the trainers here. Give Peter a break again. Have some more wine. First of all, I think this is a good one from Brian J. Laylor. Sorry if I butchered that. First of all, he says, thanks for all the resources and info you guys provide. You're welcome. We appreciate your questions. We appreciate your feedback and your support. So, on to the question. How to stop long chase on hens without pigeons. Okay. Recall's good in training, but when birds fly, whistle, vibrate, and low to medium stim is ignored. It's a 2-year-old GSP in Iowa. They joined a preserve for more bird training. So I hope I asked those in the right order because I don't know which order it was in, but that seemed the most logical. order to ask that question in.
Okay, so how to stop
Long chases.
Long chases and you don't have access to
basically
pigeons.
hens that aren't getting shot.
Yeah,
So
birds that aren't shot, even roosters that you shoot, you miss. I mean, I don't miss, but
watch some of his videos. He
Yeah.
misses.
I think you'll edit those misses out, but I've seen some of those misses. They really happen.
so when you shoot, you miss, bird flies away, or it's a hen, whatever. You said teaching this without pigeons, and this isn't actually something that I would teach necessarily with pigeons, but with any bird. A strong recall, which in your second part sounds like that you are lacking in that department.
Sounds like your dog probably has a start to understanding, a start to the conditioning, but we like to say we need the dog to be proofed with the collar, which means a full understanding, which allows you to use more stimulation and have the desired response. If the dog truly understands what the collar means, how to shut off that stimulation by doing something, recalling, then you can use more stimulation to get that response. If they're ignoring medium levels of stimulation, that's because their adrenaline is pumping and they are completely distracted and focused on that bird, and you're not getting through to them on vibrate or mild, medium levels of stimulation.
No, we're going to use the lowest level for any given training situation, but when you've got a dog chasing that bird, it's exciting, and the levels are going to have to go up because the level of excitement is higher. We've got to, get the volume up basically high enough that it can be heard. So the last part of that.
The end of that was they joined a preserve for more bird training. I don't know if there was more to that or not.
Well, join a preserve for more bird training is great. I will say that I've heard people say all birds are good and bird exposure is good, and there's no such thing as bad bird exposure, which I disagree with.
All birds are created equal.
Yeah, it's just not the case. So you have to pay attention at your preserve with how things are happening. If you're going to spend a lot of time at the preserve and you ultimately want to be able to hunt wild birds, you need to have a preserve that's letting the birds go so that the birds are wildish. If they're dizzying them or tucking them or doing those things, those could eventually cause problems. If you see that your dog is learning naughty habits at the preserve, I would knock that back just a little bit. If your goal is to hunt wild birds. If your goal is to hunt preserve birds, let them do whatever they want.
Well, not whatever they want.
Not whatever they want, but I mean, as you're hunting, you're not going to be creating problems for wild birds because you're never going to hunt them. So I would assume most people want to hunt wild birds. So.
Yeah, and you're in Iowa. There's wild birds in Iowa, so you're going to want to get on wild birds.
So
basically, the answer to your question is
collar conditioning.
Collar conditioning to recall sounds like it needs a little more work, a little more proofing. But we definitely appreciate you thanking us for our resources, and we appreciate you guys and the fact that we're doing all of these YouTube videos and creating all these free resources. We love educating people. We love help telling people what we've learned from our experiences, so maybe they don't make the same mistakes we did back in the day.
We made some mistakes.
We
made a lot of mistakes.
Can we do a whole episode on that? I mean,
on all the mistakes we made?
I mean, just the things I've seen, right? We've been there from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The things that have happened.
Oh yeah, we're going to do a video on the beeper collar with Nix from Brewster.
Little throwback.
Yeah. So, guys, we've got a Patreon community set up, and there is a tier just for y'all that want to support our YouTube channel and these videos that we put out. You go in there, you throw a little money in the kitty. It helps us to continue to make more videos just like this.
So that's our little caveat on that. Now it's time for some fun questions, and we all can be involved in this.
Question.
Oh, you get a question?
Let's just make a third video. You want to do a third video? Because we're
25
time
minutes
was. So one more time. This video is brought to you by an empty bottle of Grape Creek wines.
It's not empty yet.
Bellissimo was our choice for the night, and so we will.
It's delicious.
It is pretty good. So Texas wine's right there. So.
And we're having so much fun answering your questions.
Yeah,
we're going to do a part 3.
Do a part 3.
Round 3. Here we come.